After the accident, she lost her memory, survived with stray dogs, until one man's love gave her life.
The rain never stopped on the colony's south quarter. It wasn't the kind of clean rain that rinsed dirt away. It fell heavy, dragged soot off the upper decks, and left black streaks across the skeleton of the city. The streets were mostly empty at this hour, just broken carts, sagging stalls, and dogs picking at scraps near the gutters. Under a collapsed awning, a young alien woman crouched with her back pressed against a wall. She couldn't remember her name. She couldn't remember where she came from. All she had was the present: hunger, cold, and the sound of her own heartbeat hammering in her ears. Her violet skin was mottled with mud. Her long black hair clung to her face, and her bare feet were cut and raw from days moving across the jagged streets. She clawed at a torn sack of kibble that had spilled from an abandoned market stall. She shoved the food into her mouth quickly, afraid it would be taken away. 3 dogs circled her. Another leaned against her shin. They weren't her pets, but they had accepted her as one of them. Every sound made her flinch. Each echo of boots or metal clatter sent a shot of panic through her chest. She didn't know if she was running from someone or simply from herself. She only knew one thing: the accident had burned her memory away. Sometimes flashes came, an explosion, heat on her skin, screaming, but they ended before she could grasp meaning. She had stopped trying to understand. Survival was simpler. Eat when there was food, sleep when the body shut down, wake when the dog stirred. Werner turned into the alley carrying his bag of records. He walked this route home every night. He didn't need to. His apartment lay in the opposite direction, but he preferred the detour because it kept him away from the crowds near the market square. Werner was 32, human, an unremarkable man with an unremarkable job. He worked as a data compiler for the trade registry, logging shipments no one cared about, filing records for ships that rarely docked anymore. The work was lonely, but he liked it that way. He wasn't a fighter, not a mechanic, not a soldier, just a man who wanted to keep his head down and survive. But when he saw her crouched there in the rain, he stopped. At first he thought she was just another scavenger. Then he noticed her bare feet, the cuts on her arms, the way her shoulders hunched like an animal's. The dogs bristled when his boots splashed into the gutter. Her head snapped toward him, her eyes, bright lilac, wide and confused, fixed on him with a mix of fear and hostility. Werner froze, not out of fear of her, but out of caution. He knew how the desperate reacted when cornered. She looked feral, not because she wanted to be, but because she had been left no other way. "I'm not here to take anything," he said, keeping his voice steady. He set his bag down in the rain so she could see his hands. He crouched, lowering himself to her level. The cold water soaked into his trousers immediately, but he ignored it. She hissed, lips pulling back as if she meant to bite. The largest dog stepped in front of her, a warning growl rumbling from its throat. Werner studied the situation in silence. He could walk away, leave her to the rain and the dogs. It wasn't his problem. That would be the sensible thing. Avoid trouble, stay invisible, and keep living quietly. But he also knew that walking away meant leaving a person to die like garbage in the street. He couldn't carry that with him. He reached into his coat slowly and pulled out a ration bar. He sat on the wet ground between them, sliding it closer with 2 fingers. "Food," he said calmly. "Yours if you want it. No cost." Her eyes darted between the bar and his face. Suspicion, fear, desperation. The muscles in her jaw worked as if she was chewing air. She didn't trust him, but the hunger was stronger than pride. She snatched the ration, tore the wrapper with her teeth, and stuffed a piece in her mouth. She broke another piece for the dog at her leg. Werner watched closely. That detail, feeding the dog before herself, told him more than anything else. She wasn't just surviving. She still cared, even if it was only for the creatures that didn't abandon her. That meant she was worth saving. He unhooked his canteen and set it down too. Water. Clean. She hesitated, then drank in small, controlled sips. Her throat moved as she swallowed, her eyes never leaving him. For a moment, Werner thought she might throw the canteen back in his face. Instead, she offered it to the dog, letting it lap first. "You don't remember your name, do you?" he asked quietly. Her face twisted. She shook her head once, sharply, as if the question itself hurt. She tapped her temple with 2 fingers, empty. Werner understood. "All right," he said. "Doesn't matter tonight." The rain pounded harder. Water ran in streams down the walls. Werner felt the decision solidify in his chest. He couldn't walk away. He didn't know her past, didn't know why she was here, but he knew what she would face if he left her. Disease, exposure, starvation. No one else would stop. People had learned to ignore the broken. He couldn't. "There's shelter 4 blocks from here," he said. "My place. It leaks, but the heater works. You can dry off. I won't force you. I'll leave the door open." She tensed at his words, glancing at the street behind him as if measuring the distance to escape. The dogs shifted restlessly. Werner stood, not moving closer, just giving her space to decide. For long seconds, neither of them moved. Then, without warning, she rose. Her legs wobbled, weak from hunger, but she steadied herself against the wall. She gave a short, sharp gesture with her hand, and the dogs quieted instantly. Werner noticed it. Her body remembered commands she didn't. Training from a past she couldn't recall. She looked at her hand with unease, then at him, waiting for his reaction. "You remember more than you think," he said softly. She frowned at him, not with anger, but with confusion, and stepped forward, bare feet slapping in the water. Werner turned toward the street, keeping his pace slow so she wouldn't feel trapped. She followed. The dogs followed her. As they walked, Werner felt the weight of what he was doing settle in. He was breaking his rule of survival. Don't get involved. Yet here he was, leading a stranger home. He didn't know her story, didn't know if she was dangerous, but he knew one thing for certain. If he left her in that alley, she would not survive another week. And that was a death he couldn't add to the silence of his own life. Werner led the way through the wet lanes at a steady pace, naming hazards as they moved so she could place each sound and shape before it startled her. A loose sign clattered against a post. He called it out. A clogged drain hissed where boiling water bled from a pipe. He pointed to the steam and kept walking. She followed 2 steps behind, bare feet slapping against the broken concrete, the dogs close to her knees. He checked himself each time he drifted faster than her stride and slowed again, reminding his body that rushing would read as pressure. His building leaned inward but held. The entry smelled like old paint and damp plaster. He set the key on the stoop and stepped back so she could decide. She picked it up, studied the teeth, and looked at him with a guarded question. He kept his voice even. "You control the door. If you want me out, say it, and I go down the stairs. If you want me in the other room, I move. If you want it locked, you lock it." She nodded once and turned the key herself. The cylinder caught, then turned with a tired click. Up 2 flights, he ward her about the bad board. She tried it with a bare toe, felt the give, and stepped over it. Inside his room, heat leaked from a dented grate. A singed towel stuffed the window seam to stop the draft. A single lamp hummed to life when he tapped the base. The space was small and plain. Narrow bed, battered chair, cooker on a crate, basin and bucket by the bathroom door. He watched her scan the corners, the height of the window, the distance from the bed to the door. She was not just looking. She was mapping exits and sight lines, a habit that came from somewhere deeper than memory. He lifted both hands from his sides. "You see everything I see. No one else here." She moved to the heater and tested the air with her palm. Warmth loosened her shoulders. Under the grime, faint light pulsed along her ribs, slow and regular like a calm breath. He set a folded shirt and a pair of trousers on the bed. "They're clean. They'll be big." He pointed at the bathroom. "Water runs if you let the pipe cough first. The mirror is cracked. If the sound of the spray makes you tense, I can bring the basin so you can wash here with a cloth. Your choice." Her eyes flicked to the bathroom and back. She lifted 2 fingers and touched her temple, then spread her hand small, a gesture that meant words won't come. He answered the thing she hadn't asked. "You understand me, because language sits in a different part of the mind. You lost the personal map, not the road signs. The words stayed. The pieces about you shook loose." She held his gaze for a second, and something unclenched. She tried a word, voice rough from disuse. "Safe." He nodded. "Yes." He took off the thin metal band from his wrist and placed it on the table. Registry chip. Tracked work hours if I let it. It will stay here. He slid it far from her as a clear line. She watched the band, then his face, waiting for the turn she had seen before in other people. It didn't come. She shifted her weight, made a small hand sign to the dogs. They settled by the heater as if they had always lived in this room. He filled the kettle and set on the cooker. Hot drink after you wash, he said, and food without a wrapper. She did not smile, but the tension in her mouth eased. The bathroom door stuck when it swelled. He showed her the trick with his hip to unjam it, then stepped aside. She turned the latch and left it open the width of her hand. Water coughed in the pipe and then ran steady. He sat on the chair facing the room, not the door, and kept his eyes on the lamp so she would not feel watched. He listened for signs of panic. None came, only measured breathing over the hiss of spray. He laid a towel by the heater and set a comb next to it, then put a small tin of salve on the crate in case the cut along her hairline stung when it warmed. While she washed, he answered the questions that always rose in the first quiet. Why help at all? Why risk bringing a stranger home? What did he want in return? He stood on the simple answers and let them be enough. He worked alone in a dead-end division because numbers made sense when people didn't. He took the long route home to avoid noise because crowds turned every errand into a test. He had no plan beyond food, heat, and a dry blanket because planning beyond the next hour would put pressure on both of them and pressure would push her back into the street. If she chose to leave after warming up, he would let her go. If she stayed, he would set rules that protected her choices and his space. His mission, if the word applied, was smaller than rescue. Keep a person alive tonight without owning them tomorrow. She stepped out of the bathroom with wet hair combed straight back, wearing his gray shirt and trousers rolled at the waist, the fabric clinging where heat met clean skin. The glow beneath her ribs was clearer now, faint lines that ran along the sides of her torso and down her hips, pulsing in a slow rhythm that matched her breathing. She looked different even in his oversized clothing, not transformed, just present. She sat on the edge of the bed and slid her fingers under the fabric at her knee to check a scab with clinical focus, then glanced at the tin of salve and back to him. He nodded toward it. For the cut on your head as well. It stings for a second. She dabbed a small amount on her hairline, sucked a breath at the burn, and steadied. He poured tea into 2 chipped mugs. The room smelled like steam and cloth. He set a plate with bread, a boiled egg, and a square of fried root on the crate. Eat what you want. Save what you want for the dogs. I won't count. She reached for the egg first and cracked it with a clean, practiced roll against the plate. Her hands knew the motion. She paused halfway to her mouth, as if the muscle memory itself scared her. He kept his focus on his own cup to give her room to feel it without commentary. He tried one question with care. Do you remember the blast? He didn't make it a true sentence. He left space for a nod or a shake. She swallowed and set the egg down. Her eyes tracked the wall behind him and narrowed, as if she were seeing heat instead of paint. Cargo transport. Noise like pressure. Light. Street lifted. She touched the right side of her head with 2 fingers. Then dogs. The words came hard but straight. He did not ask for more. He gave her a fact she could measure against the fragment. There was a fuel truck chained to the freight line near South Square last month. Someone tried to strip the valve. Half the block burned. Rescue never came. She breathed out slowly as the details fit the outline in her mind. The relief was small and visible. Not because the event was less terrible now, but because the hole in her sequence had an edge. He could feel the next question push up, the one about her name, and he met it before it cut her again. You do not have to force a name back. A person can use a placeholder until the right one returns, or until she chooses a new one. He looked at the floor, not at her, and offered one. Serena. It means nothing in our records. I checked last year for a weather buoy designation, and the letter stuck with me. He kept it light and factual, not a ceremony. She repeated the sound, testing the shape of it without looking at him, then said it again, clearer. She tapped her chest once. He didn't say good or right. He only answered, I'll use it if you do. She ate more, slower now. The dogs watched her hand and the heater with equal interest. She broke a piece of bread for each of them, the same size each time, a fairness that asked nothing in return. He noted the choice because fairness when hungry is a data point you can build on. She glanced at the door bolt and then at the key on the table. He stood and showed her the deadbolt with his hand away from the metal. This is the only lock. Turn it if you want the line between inside and outside sharp. If you want it open, leave it. If you want to test me, lock it while I'm here and see if I move to the chair without argument. She turned the bolt back and forth once to feel the action, then left it open. That simple decision calmed his chest more than it should have. Trust is a basic thing, and it holds a room together better than a brace in the wall. He set a thin blanket on the bed and a folded one on the floor by the chair. You take the bed, I take the floor. If you wake from a bad dream, the lamp switch is here. He tapped the base. If you feel sick, the basin is under the table. She took in the arrangement and then did something he hadn't planned for. She stood, lifted the floor blanket, and placed it by the heater for the dogs, then pointed at the chair and made a short gesture that read like a rule. Chair for him, bed for her, no distance games. He nodded. Clear boundaries helped both of them breathe. He checked the cut on her scalp with his eyes only. The bleeding had stopped. He set out a strip of clean cloth in case she wanted a wrap and let it sit without comment. She looked at it, weighed the choice, and tied a neat band around her head with a steady hand. No tremor, no panic, function over display. He chose now to state his simple terms so questions would not gnaw at the edges of the room. No one else comes here. I do not talk about you in the registry. I bring food and leave a portion on the table even if you are sleeping. If you want to leave, you leave. If you take the key, you keep it. If something about me makes you feel unsafe, you say one word and I step out. He did not ask for mirrored rules. She made one anyway. She touched 2 fingers to her lips, then to the table, then shook her head. No stealing, no lying about essentials. Her law for herself, offered without pride. He accepted it as if they had drawn up a contract and signed it. Only then did he allow himself to ask a practical question he knew viewers would want answered. Can you read signs? She tilted her hand. Some, not fast. He parsed it. Your brain kept the tool for language, but cut loose the details tied to your life. It is common after shocks. We move slow and let the pathways rebuild. She listened and did not look lost. Clear explanations given in small pieces raised the ground under her feet. She finished the egg and half the bread and pushed the rest to the dogs. Heat reached the far corners of the room. The lamp hummed. Rain flattened against the window. She slid under the blanket with the key on the table where both of them could see it. Her eyes tracked the ceiling for a while, following a stain that looked like nothing but water and time. He sat in the chair by the door, coat folded under his head as a cushion, boots off to keep the floor clean. He did not tell himself he had done enough. He did not tell himself a story about saving anyone. He watched the line of the doorframe and kept his breathing even so the first safe sleep she had in weeks would hold. Her voice came in the dark, low and honest. Werner. He answered, the same tone. Here. She was quiet for a long beat. Serena. He said it back once as a fact. Serena. She let the words settle like a small weight she chose to carry. When her breathing slipped into a slow rhythm, the bioluminescent lines at her ribs matched it, steady and calm. He let the room stay as it was simple, warm, visible, and decided that tomorrow's work would be basic. Food, clean clothes, a short walk to test balance, a check on the wound. No questions that opened the ground under her too fast. He turned the lamp down a fraction, but did not darken the room. The dogs slept by the heater. The building shifted once and then held. The rain kept its blunt tempo. In the chair, he stayed awake longer than he needed, alert to any change in her breath or a small sound at the door, not as a guard, but as a person who had chosen a task. Keep this night simple, keep it safe, build trust one clear action at a time. Morning came slow in Werner's apartment. The rain outside hadn't stopped, but the light that pressed through the cracked window was softer than the night before. The heater ticked as it cycled, filling the room with a dry warmth that still smelled faintly of rust. Werner was already awake, sitting in the chair by the door, his coat draped across his knees. He hadn't slept more than a few hours, but his eyes were alert. On the bed, Serena stirred. Her breathing shifted first, Then her eyes opened, catching the ceiling stain as if it were unfamiliar. For a moment, she looked like she might panic, unsure of where she was, but then she saw him. He didn't move, didn't speak, only gave her a small nod that confirmed she hadn't been abandoned. Her shoulders eased into the thin blanket. The dogs by the heater lifted their heads, tails thumping once against the rug. They hadn't moved much through the night, as if sensing their place had finally settled. Serena rubbed her face with both hands, her expression tightening when she realized the grime from yesterday was gone. Her skin clean, her hair damp but combed. The simple memory of washing seemed to ground her. Werner spoke first, his voice steady, practical. "You slept through the night. No dreams that woke you." He wasn't asking, he was telling, giving her a fact she could hold on to. She pushed herself upright, pulling the oversized shirt tighter across her chest. Her gaze fell on the key, still resting on the table where she had left it. Relief crossed her face, proof that the night hadn't been a trick. There were questions hanging in the air, the kind that listeners would ask if the silence dragged too long. How much did she remember of the accident? Could she even function beyond instinct? Why had Werner brought her here, where he could have walked away? These doubts pressed quietly between them, and he decided to address them one by one. Not as interrogation, but as answers slipped into the rhythm of the morning. He set a small pot on the cooker, pouring in water he had collected earlier. "Your head wound?" he asked, glancing at the cloth tied around her hairline. She touched it lightly. "No pain now." Her voice was rough but clearer than the night before. "Good," he said. "That means no infection yet. We'll check again tonight." He placed bread on the crate, cut into slices, and added a strip of cured meat he had been saving. She hesitated, eyes narrowing on the food. "You think I want something back," Werner said quietly. "That's normal. People don't give here without expecting to take later. But I'm not a trader, not a collector. My work is counting shipments. That's all." She studied him with a guarded look, searching for the catch in his words. Finally, she took a piece of bread, broke it in half, and fed a small portion to the dog nearest her. The rest she ate slowly, chewing with visible effort, as if her stomach had forgotten what real food was. Werner noted the pace. Hunger made people eat fast. Caution made them slow. She was still afraid, but it was a measured fear now, not blind panic. The silence stretched, and then she asked a question of her own, surprising both of them. "Why help me?" Her words were low, but direct. Werner didn't answer right away. He leaned back in the chair, rubbed his palms together, and let the weight of the question sit. "Because I was tired of walking past people as if they weren't there. That's the truth. I've seen too many lying in the rain with no one stopping. I don't want to add you to that list. That's all the reason I have." Her expression shifted, still doubtful, but softer now. It wasn't trust yet, but it was the first step toward it. The kettle hissed. He poured water into 2 mugs and slid one across the crate. She cupped it in both hands, blowing on the steam, then took a sip. The warmth hit her chest, and she let out a sound halfway between relief and disbelief. He caught it, and for a moment, his face eased. To fill another gap that would nag at anyone watching, Werner added details she hadn't asked for but needed. "The blast you remember, it was a cargo transport, not a war strike. Wrong valve was pulled, the whole line went. Dozens didn't make it. Rescue crews didn't cover this sector. If you woke up here, it means you were thrown clear. That's why your head took the damage. Your memory will come back in pieces, maybe not all, but enough." Serena looked down at the mug, eyes tightening as fragments of sound and heat returned to her. She whispered fire, screams, then nothing. Her hand trembled, and she gripped the mug harder. Werner kept his tone firm. "You're not in that fire anymore. You're here. That's the only fact that matters right now." She nodded once, holding on to the words. Werner stood, moving to the small window. Outside, rain streaked the cracked glass, distorting the broken skyline. "I'll have to go out in a few hours," he said. "Registry won't notice if I miss one day, but not 2. When I go, you can stay here. Bolt the door if you want. No one comes in but me." He paused, turning back to her. "If you want to leave, you leave. I won't stop you. But food, water, and heat will be here if you stay." Her throat worked as she swallowed. She didn't answer, but her fingers clutched the mug tighter, a clear sign she wasn't ready to let go of the room yet. The dogs had curled into the rug, steam from their wet fur rising faintly near the heater. One of them whined softly, and Serena reached down, scratching behind its ear with absent tenderness. She froze when she realized what she was doing, her body moving on its own, and glanced at Werner with alarm. He only said, "You've done that before. Somewhere. It means there's more in you than you think." Her expression shifted again, torn between fear of what she couldn't remember and relief that not everything was lost. She took a slow breath, then spoke a word with more clarity than before. "Serena." She touched her chest as she said it. It wasn't a question anymore. It was a choice. Werner nodded once. "Serena." The sound of it filled the room, quiet but solid. That morning became the beginning of their pattern. One she didn't fully trust yet, but one she couldn't walk away from either. She had food, warmth, a roof that didn't leak, and someone who looked at her without seeing a burden or a trade. Werner had broken his own rule of keeping distance, and though it unsettled him, he didn't regret it. The rain outside kept falling, but for the first time since the accident, Serena wasn't alone in it. The hours of that first morning passed in silence, broken only by the hiss of rain against the cracked window and the quiet shuffle of dogs repositioning themselves on the rug. Werner stayed near the table, writing in a small ledger he carried from the registry. The pen scratched slowly across the paper, his hand steady. Serena sat on the bed, still in his oversized shirt and rolled trousers, watching the steam from her mug rise until it faded into the dim air. She had eaten, she had slept, yet her body still trembled at small sounds. The drip in the corner, the creak of the building settling. Werner noticed, but didn't point it out. He let the room stay calm, predictable. He didn't want to force her into conversation. He wanted her to feel the absence of threat, an absence she hadn't known for too long. By midday, he rose from the chair and filled a bucket from the tap in the bathroom. The pipes groaned before the water ran, the sound rough but familiar. He set the bucket near the heater and dropped a cloth inside. "You should wash properly," he said, voice steady. "It helps. Not just the dirt, your skin, your wounds. Infection sets in fast in this quarter." Serena stiffened. She pulled her knees up and hugged them to her chest. The word wash stirred something sharp in her. The memory of the previous night's shower flickered in her mind. Steam, warmth, the sense of being exposed. For a second, she looked ready to refuse. Werner kept his distance, crouched by the heater, his eyes on the bucket instead of her. "I'll help only if you want. If not, I'll leave the cloth and the water. Your choice." The dogs shifted, ears twitching, waiting for her command. She didn't give one. Slowly, she lowered her feet to the floor. The shirt slipped across her shoulder, revealing the faint glow of her markings. She didn't notice until his eyes flicked toward it, and then she yanked the fabric up quickly, cheeks tightening in anger. At herself, at him, at the situation. Werner raised his hand once, a simple gesture of reassurance, then looked away. She crossed to the bucket with unsteady steps. The warmth from the heater touched her skin, and she knelt beside it. Her fingers dipped into the water, tracing the surface, testing the heat. Her shoulders loosened just a little. Werner rose and fetched another cloth, placing it on the chair near her. "I'll sit here. If you need help with a bandage on your head, tell me. I won't touch without you saying so." She looked at him, studying the lines of his face, the quiet way he spoke. Her body still held tension, but the panic had dulled into caution. With a small nod, she agreed. She peeled the cloth bandage from her head and held it out. Werner stood, crossed the room slowly, and took it from her. The wound along her hairline had closed into a red mark, the skin raw but healing. He would have cornered the clean cloth and dabbed gently. She winced, her breath catching, but didn't pull away. "You're healing," he said quietly. "The cut won't scar if we keep it clean." Her lilac eyes lifted to his, wide and searching. For a moment, her expression softened. The fear wasn't gone, but trust flickered there, brief and fragile. Werner didn't press further. He rinsed the cloth, set it on the chair again, and stepped back. "The rest is yours to do." She continued on her own, dipping the cloth into the bucket and wiping her arms, her neck, her legs. Mud and grime stained the water as she worked. The bioluminescent lines across her body grew clearer with each pass, glowing faintly under the lamplight. Werner kept his eyes on his ledger, forcing himself to give her privacy, though he was aware of every sound. The cloth wrung out, the quiet intake of her breath, the faint slosh of water. When she finally stopped, she sat still, drops of water tracing her skin where the shirt clung. Her gaze lingered on him again. She seemed to test something unspoken. Would he look at her like others had? Or would he keep that distance she now relied on? He didn't move from the chair, didn't stare. He only asked, "Better?" A slow breath left her chest. She nodded. Better. That single word carried weight. It was the first time she admitted improvement, not just survival. Werner stood and emptied the dirty water into the drain. He scrubbed the bucket clean before refilling it for later. When he returned, she was lying back on the bed, the blanket pulled loosely over her, eyes half closed. The dogs had gathered around the heater, but one lifted its head to watch him, protective. He lowered his voice as if speaking to both her and the animal. "You're safe here. Rest again. I'll keep watch." Her lips parted as if she wanted to say more, but the words caught. Instead, she curled on her side, the faint glow of her markings visible through the fabric of his shirt. Within minutes, her breathing slowed, deeper this time, unbroken by fear. Werner sat back down in the chair. His eyes stayed on her, not in desire, not in pity, but in quiet resolve. He thought of the question she had asked that morning. Why help me? He had given her the simple answer then, but sitting here listening to her steady breaths, he realized there was another. Because in a world where people stepped over the broken, he couldn't be one of them. The rain eased for the first time in days, falling in thin streaks instead of hammering sheets. Pale light pressed through the cracked window, catching the steam from the heater. The air inside the room felt warmer than before, carrying the faint smell of bread and boiled roots. Werner sat at the table, knife in hand, cutting the food into neat pieces. He worked in silence, his movements steady, as if the order itself could calm the room. Serena sat on the bed, the blanket pulled around her shoulders. She looked stronger, skin no longer gray with grime, her violet tone clearer, the faint glow of her markings brighter. Yet her eyes stayed distant, locked on the wall as if searching for something not in the room. The dogs dozed near the heater, their ears twitching at small sounds but otherwise calm. When Werner placed the plate on the crate between them, she reached for a piece of bread. Her fingers hesitated midair, trembling slightly. Her breathing changed. She pressed her fingertips to her temple, a sudden tightness in her face. He noticed. "What is it?" he asked, his voice low direct. Her hand clenched around the bread, and she whispered, "Fire." The word came out strained, almost forced. Her eyes darted back to the wall, unfocused. Crowd noise. Cargo. Werner leaned forward, careful not to move too close. "You're remembering?" She nodded once, sharp, as if the motion hurt. "People running. Heat." She gripped the blanket tighter, shoulders shaking. A man screaming. He tried to open. Her words broke off. She gasped, hands covering her face. Then light. Then nothing. The room went quiet except for the rain tapping the window. Werner stayed still, letting her catch her breath. He didn't press. After a long moment, she lowered her hands, eyes wet but focused now. "I saw them," she whispered. "I wasn't alone." Werner answered in the same calm tone he had used since the night he found her. "You weren't." The blast hit everyone in the square. Most didn't make it. "You did." Her jaw clenched. "Why me?" "That's not a question with an answer," Werner said firmly. "Accidents don't choose. What matters is you're here now. Alive." She shook her head, torn between relief and guilt. "I should remember more. My name. My home." He met her eyes. "Memory doesn't come back all at once. Forcing it will only hurt you. Let it return in fragments. Take what comes." Her breathing steadied slowly. She looked at him, searching for signs of judgment, but saw none. Instead, she saw patience, a man not trying to dig into her past, only to keep her standing in the present. After a moment of silence, she asked something new, something that would have lingered in any listener's mind. Why did you give me a name? Why Serena? Werner leaned back in the chair, his voice even. Because you didn't have one to use. Because you needed something to hold on to. And because I couldn't keep calling you you. He shrugged slightly. It's not a label. It's yours to keep or leave behind. But while you're here, it gives you ground to stand on. She repeated the name under her breath, Serena. This time, it didn't sound uncertain. It sounded like she was testing the fit of something she might choose to keep. The food between them grew cold, but she ate eventually, slower this time, pausing when flashes of memory pressed in. Werner didn't fill the silence. He let her own pace dictate the rhythm of the room. When she finished, she leaned back against the wall, exhaustion plain in her face. Her voice was quieter when she spoke again. If I remember everything, I might not want to stay. Werner held her gaze, serious. That's your choice. I won't chain you to this place. But don't decide now. Decide when you know what matters more, the life you lost or the one you can build here. She looked away, but not with fear. More with thought. His words sank deep, unsettling but grounding. The dog stirred at her feet, one resting its head against her toes. She reached down, stroking its fur absent-mindedly, and for the first time since he had found her, her hand didn't shake. That night, as she lay under the blanket, fragments of fire and screams returned again, but alongside them came a different image. Werner's steady face across the crate, his voice anchoring her when everything else blurred. It frightened her less this time. The past was still broken, but the present was beginning to make sense. The rain had stopped for the first time in weeks. The silence outside was strange. No constant drumming on the roof, no steady hum in the gutters. The air that came through the cracked window smelled damp but fresh, carrying the faint metallic tang of the colony's rusting towers. Inside, the heater hummed quietly. The dogs lay scattered across the rug, stretched out and relaxed, no longer curled up in tight, defensive knots. Werner sat at the table, ledger open but untouched. His eyes drifted off into the bed, where Serena sat cross-legged, towel around her shoulders, her long black hair dripping onto the floorboards. She had washed again that morning, this time without his help. When she stepped out of the bathroom, her movements were less guarded. She had taken one of his clean shirts, cinched at the waist with a strip of cloth, and though it hung loosely, it looked deliberate, like she wanted to claim it rather than borrow it. She was changing, not just her skin and her hair, but the way she held herself. Less hunched, less ready to flee. But the air between them carried something sharper now. Curiosity, tension, the beginning of choice. Werner cleared his throat and finally spoke. How does your head feel today? Serena touched the spot above her temple where the wound had been. The scab had faded to a thin pink line. No pain. Her voice was stronger than the day before, her words less broken. That's good, he said. He forced his eyes back to the ledger, trying to focus on the numbers that meant nothing outside the registry. He didn't want to stare, but every time he heard the shift of fabric or the faint drip of water from her hair, his body reminded him of her presence. She watched him, studying the way he avoided her gaze. It unsettled her, but not in the way fear had. For the first time in weeks, she realized she wasn't being looked at as prey, as a body to be used or ignored. He looked at her with restraint, and that restraint drew her in. After a long silence, she asked, "You live here alone?" "What?" Werner shut the ledger, knowing numbers wouldn't distract him now. "Because it's easier. People want things I don't have. Food, credits, promises. Alone, no one asks, and no one is disappointed." Serena tilted her head. "And now you let me in." He met her eyes. "I didn't plan it." He hesitated, then admitted what had sat in him since the first night. "I just couldn't leave you in the street." Her lips parted, as if she wanted to argue, but the words didn't come. She looked down at the towel in her lap, then back up at him. Most would have walked past. "I'm not most," he said simply. The room went quiet again, but the quiet wasn't heavy anymore. It carried a different weight. Expectation, unspoken questions neither of them had voiced yet. Serena shifted on the bed, the blanket slipping off her shoulder. The shirt clung damply to her skin, and faint bioluminescent lines glowed along her ribs and thighs, clearer now than they had ever been. She noticed his glance, but didn't cover herself this time. Instead, she let it linger, as if testing what he would do. Werner's throat tightened. He forced himself to breathe evenly, to keep his voice calm. "You should stay warm. Wet clothes can make you sick." He stood, crossed the room, and set another dry blanket on the bed. He moved a step back, but her hand shot out, catching his wrist. Her grip wasn't strong, but it was steady. Her lilac eyes locked on his. "You always move away," she whispered. "Why?" Werner froze. His instinct told him to retreat, to keep the line sharp. But he saw the question for what it was, not accusation, but fear. She needed to know if his restraint was rejection. "Because I don't want to hurt you," he said quietly. "Because you've had enough taken from you already." Her hand tightened slightly, then relaxed. She pulled him closer, just enough that he sat on the edge of the bed. The dog stirred, but stayed quiet, sensing the shift in the room. "I don't feel afraid now," she said, voice low. He searched her face. Her pupils were wide, her breathing quick but not panicked. He wanted to believe her, but doubt clawed at him. What if her trust was fragile? What if he broke it too soon? His chest ached with the weight of restraint. "Then we take it slow," he said firmly. Serena leaned forward, her damp hair brushing his arm. She hesitated only once, then pressed her lips to his cheek, light, almost uncertain. His body stilled, then slowly turned toward her. Their eyes met again, and this time, when she leaned in, he didn't pull away. Their mouths met, tentative at first, then deeper as her hand slid up his arm. The kiss broke with both of them breathing harder, not from hunger, but from the fear of what came next. She pulled back, eyes searching his, waiting to see if he regretted it. Werner only said, "You're safe." Always. Her shoulders relaxed. For the first time since he had found her, she smiled, small, fragile, but real. That night, she lay beside him under the same blanket. Not pressed close, not yet, but near enough that her glow reflected faintly across his chest. Sleep came easier than before, and though neither spoke of it, both knew something had shifted, something they couldn't walk back from. The night air was heavy, carrying the smell of damp concrete and rust through the cracked window. The rain had returned, softer this time, more like a steady drip than a storm. In the dim light of the lamp, Serena lay on her side, her markings glowing faintly under the fabric of Werner's shirt. She was awake though her eyes were closed, her breath shallow, uneven. Fragments had been returning all day. Small flashes, faces in firelight, a tall building collapsing in the distance, the sound of a child crying. None of it complete. Each image came sharp and brief, then vanished, leaving her chest tight and her hands trembling. She wanted to ignore it, but memory had its own way of breaking through. Werner noticed. He sat by the table, his ledger closed, his focus entirely on her. "You're not sleeping," he said quietly. Her eyes opened, staring at the ceiling. "It's coming back," she whispered. "Pieces. Too fast." He waited, giving her the choice to speak. After a long silence, she turned her head toward him. "I saw a house. Stone walls. A window with blue glass. My mother, she was there." Her voice broke on the last word. "She pulled me into the street when the alarm sounded. Then the fire came." Werner's chest tightened. He had expected fragments, but not something this personal. He kept his voice steady. "Do you remember her face?" Serena's brow furrowed. She pressed her palm to her temple. Only her eyes. Bright, kind, then gone. Tears welled, though she didn't let them fall. "Why do I remember now? Why here?" Werner leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Because you're safe enough to let it surface. Before, you were only surviving. The mind doesn't open when the body's still fighting." She breathed slowly, considering his words. He was right. Survival had left no room for memory. Now, with warmth, food, and his presence anchoring her, the doors had begun to open. The silence between them grew heavier. Finally, she whispered the thought that had been burning in her since the fragments began. "If I remember everything, what if I have to leave? What if someone waits for me?" Werner's jaw tightened. It was the question he had dreaded. He forced himself not to look away. If they're alive and you want to find them, I won't stop you. It has to be your choice. Her eyes locked on him, wide, almost fearful. And if I go, he swallowed hard, answering honestly, then I'll go back to being alone. That's what I was before you. Her lips parted. She searched his face, expecting to see bitterness or demand. Instead, she found only sincerity, and that unsettled her more than any fire memory. She sat up, pulling the blanket around her shoulders. You don't understand, she said, voice shaking. When I woke in the street, I had nothing. No name, no memory, only the dogs. You gave me a place, a voice, a name. Now that the old pieces return, I don't know which life is real. Werner rose from the chair and crossed the small room. He stopped a step from her, careful not to close the distance without permission. Both are real, he said, but you get to choose which one you live in. For a long moment, she stared at him, torn between past and present. Then her hand lifted, catching his shirt at the chest, pulling him down to her. Her lips met his, not tentative this time, but certain, trembling with urgency. His arms wrapped around her shoulders, steadying her as she pressed closer, her body warm against his. When they broke apart, her eyes glowed faintly, her markings bright under the fabric. I don't want to go back, she whispered. I want this. Werner brushed a strand of wet hair from her face. Then stay. The words settled in the room like a decision made. She leaned into him, resting her forehead against his chest. Her breath slowed, steadying. The fragments of her past were still there, sharp and painful, but for the first time she felt she could carry them without being consumed. That night, she didn't sleep on the far side of the blanket. She curled against him, her glow lighting the small space between their bodies. His hand rested on her back, not possessive, only steady, and together they drifted into sleep. In the quiet, with rain whispering against the glass, Serena realized something no memory could take from her. The choice she made now was hers alone. Morning light filtered through the cracked window, cutting soft lines across the floorboards. The rain had stopped again, leaving the streets outside eerily quiet. Inside, the room was warm, the heater humming, the faint glow of Serena's markings still visible beneath the fabric of Werner's shirt. She was curled against him, her head resting on his chest, her breathing even. For the first time since he had found her, she looked peaceful, not haunted. But when her eyes opened, the fragments came in a rush. Not just flashes this time, whole sequences. She sat up abruptly, clutching the blanket to her chest, eyes wide. Werner woke instantly, watching her closely, ready for panic. Her voice trembled. I remember. He didn't speak. He let her choose her pace. My name wasn't Serena, she said, her tone low but clear. It was Alira. I lived in the Eastern Quarter, in a house with stone walls and blue windows. My mother, my brother. Her breath caught, and she pressed her fist against her mouth, eyes wet. They were there when the blast came. They didn't make it. Werner's chest tightened. He sat up slowly, keeping his distance so she didn't feel pressed. You don't have to say more if it hurts. But she shook her head fiercely. I need to speak it before it fades again. She looked at him, eyes raw. I was someone before. I had people, and now they're gone. That life is gone. The silence in the room was heavy. The dog stirred on the rug, ears twitching at her raised voice. She reached down, steadying herself by brushing her fingers through their fur. The contact grounded her. Werner finally spoke, voice steady and deliberate. Then you know the truth. And the truth doesn't change what you've built here. You can carry both, Alira, the woman you were, and Serena, the woman you are now. She stared at him, her breathing uneven. But if I was Alira, if I had a family, a place, shouldn't I honor that? Shouldn't I leave to find what's left? Werner's throat tightened, but he didn't flinch. If you believe there's something left to find, I won't hold you here. But don't walk into the ruins because of guilt. You survived. That doesn't mean you owe the dead more than your life. Her eyes filled, but she didn't cry. Instead, she reached out, gripping his hand hard. You gave me more than survival. You gave me a name when I didn't have one. You gave me a place when I was nothing but an animal in the street. If I choose to stay, it isn't because I've forgotten who I was. It's because I know who I want to be." Werner's hand tightened around hers, his voice low. "Then who do you want to be?" She leaned forward, pressing her forehead to his, her answer firm. "Serena, yours." The words broke something open in both of them. He pulled her into his arms, holding her close as if anchoring her in the present. Her lips met his with certainty, not hesitation. The kiss deepened, and when they pulled back, her markings glowed brighter than ever, shimmering along her ribs and thighs in the dim light. She wasn't hiding them anymore. That night, they didn't sleep apart. They lay together under the blanket, bodies close, breaths steady, the silence no longer heavy, but full of warmth. For the first time since the accident, Serena fell whole. Not because she remembered everything, but because she had chosen what to keep. The colony outside remained broken, the streets still lined with ruin, but inside that small room, a new life had begun. The past had ended in fire. The future began here, in his arms, in his home, with a name she chose for herself. Serena was no longer a woman with nothing. She was alive, she was wanted, and she was free. And Werner, once just a man who lived in silence, was no longer alone. Days had passed since Serena's memories returned. The house with blue windows, her family, the fire, all of it now lived inside her as something finished, not something waiting. She no longer woke in the night gasping. She no longer sat by the window, listening for footsteps that never came. Instead, she laughed softly when the dogs pawed at her legs, or when Werner cursed under his breath at the dripping ceiling that never quite stopped. The room felt different now. It wasn't just shelter, it was theirs. Clothes hung neatly on the chair she claimed as her own. A small bundle of fruit and bread sat on the counter, collected by both of them from the nearby market. Werner had moved the heater closer to the bed so she wouldn't feel cold at night. These were small things, but each one shifted the air, turning survival into life. One afternoon, the rain cleared, leaving light spread across the ruined skyline. They sat by the window, eating in silence, both content just to share the quiet. Serena leaned her head on Werner's shoulder, her long black hair spilling across his chest. Her markings glowed faintly under her loose shirt, steady and calm. "I used to wonder if I'd ever feel safe again," she said quietly. "Now I wonder how I ever lived without this." Werner turned his face toward her, brushing his stubbled jaw against her hair. "You earned this. Every piece of it." She lifted her head, searching his eyes. "No, we earned it. Together." She kissed him then, not tentative, not desperate, just certain. The kiss deepened, and he pulled her closer, his hand resting at the small of her back. She shifted, pressing against him, her breath warming his skin. Their movements were slow at first, deliberate, but the restraint they had carried for days gave way to something raw and undeniable. He laid her back on the bed, the blanket slipping to the floor. Her shirt loosened around her shoulders, revealing the glow of her markings, brighter now, alive under his touch. She reached for him, fingers threading into his hair, pulling him down on her. Their mouths met again and again, each kiss longer, more urgent, until words were no longer needed. Werner's hands traced her curves, steady but reverent, as if memorizing her body. She arched into his touch, her breath catching, her lilac eyes locked on his. "Don't stop," she whispered, voice trembling with need. He didn't. He moved with her, unhurried but unstoppable, each gesture answering the silent trust she had given him. The room filled with the sound of their breaths, the shift of fabric, the faint creak of the bed. Outside, the world remained broken, but inside, everything was whole. Their bodies moved together in rhythm, slow at first, then deeper, more certain, until every barrier between them fell away. The glow of her markings spread across her skin, lighting the dim room in soft violet. Werner kissed the lines along her ribs, her throat, her lips, each one answered with a trembling sigh, a whispered plea for more. When the tension finally broke, it was not rushed. It was full, complete, and shared, leaving them both shivering in silence, pressed close, hearts hammering in sync. Afterward, she curled into him, her head resting against his chest, her body warm and relaxed. The dog stirred by the heater, but didn't rise, as if even they understood this moment belonged to the two of them. Serenia's voice was soft, heavy with satisfaction. Now I know, no matter what I was before, no matter what I lost, this is my life. Werner kissed her forehead. And it's ours. The lamp hummed, the heater ticked, and the rain outside had finally given way to silence. In that quiet, with nothing left to take from them, their future began, not in fragments, not in fear, but in wholeness. The end.